Hi, friends. I wanted to make sure I got another video in this week because I am going to be doing some traveling next week and may not have time to do as many videos as usual. I'll try to get another one done this weekend as well, as I'm kind of getting a little backlog of questions. Thank you so much for asking them. I really appreciate the help with content because I definitely want to know what people are thinking about and curious about. So it really helps me when people ask questions. Ooh, fly, that I can then answer for videos on here. I had a question about my opinion on fasting. And it's a complicated answer, and it's a complicated topic. Um, I, with most things, I try to have a somewhat balanced approach. I know there are a lot of people out there that seem to think fasting is the be all end all, like, answer to every ailment. Uh, I also see people out there who are extremely anti fasting, even really mild, minor types of fasting. And I think both of those perspectives have some value and also have some problems. So I'm going to talk through that, and then I'm going to talk through the situations in which I think fasting may be most helpful and may be less helpful. Because ultimately it's a tool, right? And like anything, it can be used really appropriately and really effectively, or it could be used in a way that is extreme and actually damaging. And I've seen both things happen. So, the pro fasting community will talk about mainly autophagy, which is this process that happens when you're fasting. Basically, if your body is not busy digesting food and integrating nutrients and balancing the blood sugar and doing all those tasks related to eating, the body will start doing other things. It'll be like, oh, I don't have anything else to do. I guess I'm going to clean house. And so basically, what happens is the body goes around and scavenges dead and damaged cells that it can basically eat. And it's a very cleansing process for the body. And so proponents of fasting say that this is essential for issues of toxic accumulation, cancer, mitochondrial health, like our health on a cellular level, right? Which is basically the foundation of all types of health or illness. Any kind of condition we could talk about, comes back down to the health of yourself on a cellular level, right? So. They would argue that pretty much any condition could be benefited from fasting because of this autophagy process. Um, and there is truth to that. There is absolutely truth to that. There is also a benefit to resetting the microbiome and to addressing insulin resistance. There are some fascinating fasting studies from the Soviet Union, actually. A lot of the scientists and doctors are doing some really interesting research there. That we now have records of in the West. And they were, they were like curing cancer and curing schizophrenia through these extended fasting. And it's actually still very common practices in a lot of parts of that world. And part of that is this autophagy process, right? Where your body is basically cleaning house and it's cleaning out damaged cells. And it's also, when your body is not eating, right, you can also help clear out overgrown microbes. And there is a lot of really interesting evidence that part of the reason they were curing schizophrenia through these extended fasts was actually because the microbiome was getting rebalanced during that time of extended fasting. Um, and then, Jason Fung is a really famous doctor who works with diabetes and hormone imbalances, and he uses fasting extensively as well. For the purpose of balancing insulin and reducing insulin resistance, increasing insulin sensitivity. And so he uses fasting with great success with cases of diabetes and PCOS and things like this related to insulin resistance. So, for these kinds of situations, fasting may actually be appropriate. I wouldn't jump into, 7-day fast if you've never done it before. I would also make sure that you get into a ketogenic state before you start trying to fast because you need to be able to pull from your backup energy source, of ketones to be able to do this successfully. And I'm not a fan of the idea of dry fasting where some people don't drink water either. I think making sure you're getting water with electrolytes is very important while you're fasting. So if you have something like cancer or schizophrenia or diabetes or PCOS, it might be appropriate to bring fasting in as a tool. So those are more extreme situations, right? Those are pretty serious conditions where there's, been a lot of damage and a lot of really intense healing needs to happen to recover from those. So those are situations in which I think it would be appropriate. Again, ease yourself in, prep yourself properly, take care of yourself properly, do it under the supervision of a physician or a nutritionist or a naturopath or someone that can help guide you through it. Be careful with it, but there is absolutely a lot of evidence on the therapeutic potential of these kinds of practices for these kinds of conditions. Now, I have a few concerns about fasting in other kinds of situations. So, one is that a lot of my clients come to me and they have very high toxic load. They have very low nutrient status. They have evidence of a lot of nutrient deficiencies. And they have very depleted nervous systems, very depleted adrenals, and usually have very imbalanced stress hormones. Now, for these kinds of situations, I don't actually think fasting is always the best approach. First of all, when you fast, you automatically start speeding up your detoxification processes. And if you have a really high toxic load and not enough capacity to actually move those toxins out of your body, you could actually end up worse off. Right? Because all your body's going to start pulling toxins out of tissues where it's been stored. It's going to dump those toxins into your bloodstream. And if you do not have practices in place to really support detoxification, or your detoxification pathways are still very congested, that could be a really big problem. So, I usually suggest that people get to they do some basic work in improving their health. I think I see a lot of people who are, living a pretty conventional lifestyle, eating, maybe a decent, but, still not super dialed in diet, and they just jump straight to fasting, as an approach. And I don't think it should be the first step because I have this concern of what is your body going to do with all those toxins when you start detoxing. And so this could look a couple ways to support this. This could mean that you have a lot of practices in place to help your body move those toxins through. So you are also implementing like saunas, enemas, castor oil, rebounding, dry brushing, like all these traditional practices that are used to support detox. Those should always be used either as preparation or during, any kind of fasting. The other thing would be to do, intermittent fasting or every other day fasting, and then the times you're not fasting, be eating a lot of high soluble fiber vegetables so that you have a lot of binding capacity that is going to help you detoxify during the time that you're fasting, or, after you're fasting. It's going to help you then, get those toxins out. So those would be a couple ways to approach that. But again, until you've done some baseline healing and adjustment of your diet and lifestyle, you've gone through some of the initial stages of detox or die-off that just naturally happens when you improve your lifestyle, I don't think you should jump straight to fasting. The other issue is an issue of low nutrient status. Frankly, a lot of people who come to me, the last thing they need is less nutrients in their diet, right? I actually encourage people to eat quite a bit of food often when they first come to me, and especially very nutrient-dense foods, especially animal-based foods, right? This doesn't come as a surprise if you've been following me for a while, but I usually really encourage people to be eating a lot of meat and animal fat and eggs and dairy and these kinds of very rich nutrient-dense foods, and I don't usually recommend fasting or even intermittent fasting initially because most people need to refeed nutrients first. And those nutrients are actually going to help support your detoxification pathways, and get you into a more nourished, robust state of health. And after that, fasting may be more appropriate, but usually not right away. Usually people actually need to eat a lot more initially. So that's another concern of mine, is like, why are we going to exacerbate already low nutrient status that a lot of people have? And then, of course, there's the issue of stress, and for a lot of people, the idea of restricting or withholding food causes a major stress response. And whether that's physiological or psychosomatic, like, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same. So if the idea of fasting feels stressful for you, either that, or the other thing that sometimes makes me nervous is when people say, like, I feel so amazing when I fast. I just feel like high and I have so much energy and I get so much done. And to me, I'm like, okay, that means you're running on adrenaline and you are addicted to this adrenaline kick that you get when your body is stressed out. And that's a cycle we really need to break if you're going to heal. So if you struggle with stress, or you have a history of adrenal fatigue, you've lived a really stressful lifestyle your whole life, you kind of go through these cycles of, really high energy and then crashing. All these are kinds of signs of this stress hormone dysregulation. Again, I don't want you to be doing anything that is going to potentially increase your stress load, which fasting certainly can. So if you're living a very calm lifestyle and you have you're metabolically flexible enough that the idea of skipping meals or not eating for a day doesn't really stress you out, maybe it feels a little daunting, but like, okay, like I can do that, I can handle that. I trust my body to be able to handle that, then it might be appropriate. Then I might not be concerned about the stress potential. But that's my basic take on fasting. I'm not like pro fasting and I'm not anti fasting. I think it is a tool that can be used appropriately. And I usually recommend that it's not a primary technique that people use in their healing, in terms of like, it's not one of the first 5 things you do. Maybe it's like the 8th or 9th thing that you implement after your healing has progressed to a certain level. You've become more metabolically flexible. You have refed key nutrients. You have really good detoxification strategies in place. At that point, for certain conditions, it may actually be really beneficial to take your healing to the next level. For other situations, it may not. So it's a very case-by-case basis, and again, just not a first line of defense, in my opinion. So I hope that's helpful. If people have follow-up questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them for specific situations. And then I will continue chipping away at my list of video requests. Thank you so much.